Every Night is Game Night, episode 46, First Martians Deep Dive. Hey everybody, welcome back to Every Night is Game Night. This is episode 46, and we have for you our first real big deep dive episode for First Martians, probably one of the most anticipated games of 2017. This is Anthony once again with Jason.
Yo, my peoples, what's up?
And you can tell I'm a little excited, so I just jumped right in there and started talking about the game, skipped over introductions completely.
I know, first of its kind. We're playing with format here on Every Night is Game Night. I hope you guys enjoy what we end up doing.
Yeah. I mean, this is one that we interviewed Ignacy back in January. We've been talking about this game all year long. It's been on my radar for at least a year and a half now. Robinson Crusoe is one of my favorite games. It's a lot of solo gamers' favorite games. It's up there in the top 100. So this game is kind of coming like a meteorite into the solo gamosphere. And well, we'll get to kind of the initial reception from the first few thousand people who got their copies from pre-orders. But it's been an interesting path through the atmosphere, let's say, for this meteorite.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so both Anthony and I have gotten a chance to play. I've played a couple of scenarios and the whole first campaign. Anthony, how far have you gotten?
Not that far. I've done 3 scenarios, 2 of them twice each, and then I started a campaign and kind of had to stop before I got even through the first game. Was on vacation for a little bit, but so you will be all about the campaigns. I've played the scenarios quite a bit though.
Cool. Yeah. Well, so between the two of us, we have it covered, and we wanted to do this deep dive. We don't want to just do a review of this game. We want to get into it because this game is generating a lot of conversation. I think is First Martians kind of different than other games? Maybe not. But we can't deny that on Reddit, on the BGG page, different places, people are really talking about this game. So we wanted to take some time, go over the different aspects of the game, and talk about what people are talking about, give our opinions, douse some flame where appropriate. So I think that's all about. That's without further ado, let's get into it.
Yeah, let's do it. So I know that you've broken up this into a few different sections.
Yes.
So we can talk about it without rambling too much.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So just breaking it down to the different components of the game. Let's start with just the very first things that you see, which is the art, the presentation, and the components. So, you've opened the game, you've opened the shrink, the rule book is there, you haven't even opened it. What do you feel about just what you see right out of the box?
I was pretty happy. I mean, it's there's a lot of bits, of course. It's a lot like Robinson Crusoe, so you have lots of different bits. You don't know where they go. It's just a bunch of stuff. But in the end, a lot of it is just because a lot of it ends up living on the board. So you have a lot of stuff that just kind of, like the facilities pieces are modular. You have the different ring sections from when you explore. You're not necessarily going to use all those. So there's a lot of pieces. You maybe don't use all of them at once. You've got a lot of little bits for tracking things, different colors for different types of things you'll be tracking. There's a lot. So initially it's kind of overwhelming in terms of volume of components. But then you find out later you don't actually have enough of some of them, which is kind of impressive considering how much is jammed into that box.
Yeah, so that's one of the things we wanted to point out was, so the game comes with these cubes. So like red cubes, green cubes, we'll go into a little bit of what that means and all. But they're basically trackers. All the different facilities need these cubes in order to say what they say. There's enough in there for the base facilities, but then you get into these scenarios where you have to construct additional facilities, and they don't give you enough cubes for them. What is up with that?
Yeah, especially because it's the initial intro mission. Every single person's going to do that scenario, and none of them are going to have enough cubes for it. It doesn't make any sense.
Well, I mean, aside from that little hiccup, what do you think about the art?
Oh, I like it. I mean, I love the aesthetic. I love Mars. I love the sci-fi elements of it, or not so sci-fi, but near future sci-fi. And I don't know, it just really evokes that for me. I know some people think it's a little mechanical, a little sterile, I don't know, but that's what space is. It's not flashy, or it doesn't have all these extra flares and bits going to it. It's machinery, it's mechanics, it's engineering in space. So I think it captures that really well.
I think so, and we could go and use this to talk about the this next section, which is going to be the theme. So I think that, like you were saying before, the art leads you to the fact that this is a science game. The theme of this is science. You think like, space, space adventure, colonization, and all that kind of stuff. Ignacy really wanted to get away from that part of it. He talked a little bit about where the inspiration for this game came in our first podcast and other places. He wanted to make The Martian. The Martian is a book released in, I believe, 2010 by a debut author, Andy Weir, and it was transferred or made into a movie with Matt Damon, who's looking very, very handsome in that game, in the movie. So, yeah, it's a science game, and so the art definitely they could have really gone with a very stylistic presentation, but they went gritty, they went dusty, they went very dull tones, earth colors with this game, because that's what this game is. Like, this game is it's more of a survival game than an adventure game. Would you say that's accurate?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, you're not exploring for the sake of exploring. If you have to explore, it's usually to find something or fix something. It's more about keeping things running and surviving things that are happening to you than going out and exploring new things that you then have to survive.
Yeah, so that leads me to one of the first conversations that I've seen in different forums about this game, which is the theme itself. People, so I've heard this game called joyless. Like I remember one thread in particular, they were like, going through all these words. I don't know how to describe my experience, but they eventually settled on joyless. And I think that's a comparison to Robinson Crusoe, because Robinson Crusoe is an adventure game. You uncover tiles, everything has good. You're shooting jaguars in the face and getting their pelts and all that stuff that you would never do in real life. But some people do, and it sounds very adventurous. But in this game, you kind of start with everything. So like in Robinson Crusoe, you have very little and you build up. In this game, you have everything that you need, and then it all goes to crap with die rolls and with card pulls and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know. I don't know what people were expecting, but people seem really put off by that. Like, what did you think?
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense too. Like, thematically, of course, you're not going to be building things up from scratch. It all gets shipped there and it's ready to go, and it's going to break. That's the whole point of the theme. So I guess if you come at it knowing the theme and what to expect, kind of from space exploration, playing, like, for example, a game like Leaving Earth, where everything's so tight, and building it up and then it falls apart so quickly, it wasn't surprising for me, but I understand where people are coming from, and then actually had to stop and think about it. I'm like, oh yeah, it is different from Robinson Crusoe in that way. And if you do like the act of building things up, this is not that.
Yeah. So that's a good question, because I mean, I like This War of Mine is also a game that came out this year where the theme wasn't, building and exploring, adventuring like we used to with these bigger games, especially games that are kind of bigger IPs, larger distribution. A lot, it's like, with small distribution, you can have whatever theme you want. If you're going to print 50 copies of a game, then it could be, as demented or as joyless or whatever it is. But this is a large print game. I mean, this is the first print run, 3,000 copies, and it's just like the first wave of larger distribution. Was that kind of a mistake to not make this a kind of a more active adventuring game? Like Terraforming Mars, you're just building and it's fun, and it's like, you're hurling meteors or whatever. And, there's science behind it, but it's kind of like styled in a very venturistic way. Here, it's a survival game. You grind through and you get through by the skin of your teeth, and it's kind of drab, and the art presentation, like the books, if it wasn't for Mark Watney being kind of sarcastic, that book kind of would have been a drag, So was there a misfire there, is what I'm asking.
I don't know. That's hard. I mean, I think there might be some component of not fully knowing what people really, really like about Robinson Crusoe. It's not the difficulty or the randomness. It's the adventure. But at the same time, as a designer or as a publisher, if you look at the theme, you're like, this is a fun theme. This whole idea of surviving this thing and making this puzzle work, keeping the machines running, and some people really do gravitate towards that, then I do think it works fine. I mean, who would have thought that a game about stopping disease from destroying the world would become one of the most popular games of the last 20 years? Sounds pretty drab to me.
Good point.
I think it's just a matter of expectations. And I think the people who got this game first are the ones who had the highest expectations. So I think we'll probably get a better sense of whether this particular theme is going to work on the mass market, after Gen Con, after Essen, when it really gets out to everybody and people in general, how they respond to it. That said, and we'll get to this later, it's not easy to learn either. So there are other barriers here.
Oh, we'll get to that later.
Yeah.
So, well, let's get to the gameplay. So, I'm the one that put together the outline, so I get to put theme first. If Anthony wants to talk about mechanics first, he can put together the outline. So, but now that we've got my theme out of the way, let's talk mechanisms. So basically, I don't want to get too bogged down in it, because if you want to know how to learn this game, go to Rodney Smith, watch it played, and also go to Colin's One Stop Co-op Shop. They both do, in their own ways, they do excellent run-throughs of the rules. But we'll just go through it really fast so that we can make some points about the mechanisms.
Yeah, definitely. So definitely going to keep this short. Don't use this as how to learn the game at all. The game is broken up into several phases, and you're going to kind of go back and forth between the board and the app. And basically what you're doing is you start each round with an event phase. The event is going to be something in the app, and then it'll tell you kind of, this is what breaks, or this is what advances, this is what happens. It's basically drawing a card of some sort, and something happens as a result, usually bad, almost always bad. Then you move to the morale phase. The morale phase, just like in Robinson, based on where your morale is at, you're either going to gain or lose these tokens that you can use for future modifiers and special abilities. You're also going to... and then you're going to move to the production phase. And the production phase seems really complicated, and it gets more complicated as you move along. Basically, you're making sure that you have everything you need to survive. So you need to have oxygen, energy, and food. There's a certain amount produced by your facilities. At the beginning of the game, in the basic scenarios at least, you have everything you need. In some, you don't quite have enough. And then you're going to decrease things or turn things off as needed based on how much is available. So if you don't have enough oxygen, you have to close down a facility that needs oxygen. If you don't have enough food, you have to eat some of your food stores or take damage. Whatever ends up happening. Other things you'll do here, you might advance seeds, growing plants, which helps you feed yourself later. You'll increase stress. Stress it's static every round. It's one for every astronaut, but there are a lot of other things that can add stress. So those things can add up. And then you also have some malfunctions that'll trigger in this phase in the working block. Lots of words there, but basically more bad stuff that can happen to you during the production phase.
There's like 5 separate phases where bad things happen to you in this game.
Pretty much. Good is rare unless you put it on easy mode. So easy mode is appreciated, but if you want to play it the real way, it's a little rough. Action phase is next. This is where you get to do stuff. So you have your little pawns like you do in Robinson Crusoe. Everybody gets 2. If you're playing with fewer than 3 players, you also get to use these machines that give you an additional 1. So if you're playing with 2 players, you get to pick 2 machines for the game. If you're playing by yourself, you get to pick 2 machines any given round, depending on what you're doing that round. And then you're going to assign to one of the different facilities. So most facilities, or at least the ones that do stuff in the working block, it's 1-player pawn, you're going to roll dice, 2-player pawns, automatic success. With the exception of exploring and gathering, where the further away you go from the hub, the more pawns you need to succeed. So if you're going 3 different spaces away from the hub, that's +3 to the difficulty. Now you need 5 pawns for automatic success, or 4 with the roll. There are a whole bunch of different places you can go. As Jason said at the beginning of the game, everything is available. So you have, the crew quarters, a quiet place, med lab if you need to heal, control center to manage the malfunctions, the garage hall. You've got the probe bay, the lab, research in the lab, planting in the lab, working bay. The list goes on. Some of these places let you do like 6 different things. So a lot of it will depend on the scenario you're in too. There is a scenario sheet. The scenario sheet breaks down all the different things that are different about that particular scenario that you're doing. So some rules might be different. Some things might be special. You might be searching for certain things or whatever it ends up being. It's going to be custom to that scenario. And then there's the malfunction phase. So in the malfunction phase, you're going to roll dice based on each of the blocks. So when the block malfunctions, you're going to change the green cube to a red one. And there are 3 blocks. You got living, system, and working. And that means for the rest of the game, you will roll that die. So if the living block goes to red, you will roll that living block die every round for the rest of the game and move up the track based on the number it has. Basically just means more stuff is going to break more often. And once the tracks each hit 5, you draw cards, more bad stuff happens. It starts to cascade, and it can really add up quickly. So the quicker you get to all 3 dice, and the quicker those things go up, the faster things break, the harder it is to maintain, and the quicker the game devolves on you. And then the last phase is the cleanup phase. This is just removing any tokens from the board that have been spent, moving any things that you found during the round into the available spaces, moving upgrades around, etc. There's a whole bunch of stuff to move once you kind of finish the round. But the bulk of it is in placing those markers and executing on them. So the rounds can move pretty quickly. The game doesn't take as long as it seems like it might, because most of the time you're playing between 5 and 7 rounds, and some rounds will be 5 minutes. You just, all right, we're all building, succeed, fail, move on, and just a lot of kind of maintenance in between.
All right. Yeah, a lot. And that wasn't even scratching the surface on what you do in this game. So I think before we get into, learning the game and some of the issues that happen there, you mentioned Robinson Crusoe a lot. So what do you feel like are the key differences mechanism-wise between the 2 games?
Yeah, I mean, I think in Robinson, you're exploring. Like the main purpose of the game is to get, I mean, every scenario is different, but most of the time you need to explore to find things, to build things, to build up your shelter, to survive, different things that are going to come down the way. In this game, most of the time what you're doing is fixing something after it's broken, or building something that'll support something else after it's broken, or retrieving something. Like one of the scenarios is find this food that was sent to you because it all got lost, broken up in the atmosphere. So you are exploring, but really all you're doing is trying to find things that you already know they're out there, but you're trying to find the right one in the right order, or you might starve. So it's not even necessarily that the mechanics are super different. They are different, but it's kind of the approach to the mechanics that you're taking. And then the fact that everything is already there. Like you already have all the actions are out there. It's all on the board. You don't have this, all these different inventions that you're going to be building and these things that are dependent on each other. They're all out there to do. It's just a matter of which one are you going to do in what order and how, what sort of chances are you going to take? And then because of the app, there are hundreds of different possible things that can come up, unlike the limited deck that you have in the game. And Robinson Crusoe.
Yeah, so I think, for me, it's different than Robinson Crusoe, but it's different. It comes to some of the incidentals. Like, am I, exploring more, or am I researching more? To me, like, yeah, those are different kind of physical actions. But in terms of my overall headspace, how I approach the game, they were pretty much put me in the same space of, okay, I have these 2 pawns. Do I dedicate these, do I ensure an action by putting 2 pawns there, or 3 pawns or 4 pawns, whatever's necessary? Or do I split it up? How, do I want to just risk my luck, roll those dice and try to get more done? So that was the same thing. It was the same experience. And like Robinson, and I think this is what I kind of appreciate about both games. I think in cooperative games, they do really well by challenging you to manage the short term and the long term. So the short term, the long term is the mission goal. So like Anthony was saying, there might be food out in ring 2 or 3. You got to go get it. or probe on the loose. You have to go find a probe and bring it back, whatever it is. You have to build a greenhouse, whatever you're doing. That's the long-term stuff, but these events and the malfunctions create all these short-term little fires that you got to deal with, and the events. Do you put your pawn on the event thing so that the card doesn't come up later to, really screw with you a little bit? Or is the long-term goal so important? Pandemic really set the goal, the pace for that in terms of that short-term, long-term balance. I feel like this game really ratchets it up and does it a little bit better than Pandemic, of like, okay, every single turn, every single action, every single pawn placement, you're making that calculus, which I think that's what separates this game from a lot of the similar games in the genre.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think it's the press your luck aspect of, when to guarantee success versus when to roll the dice, when to let something go and just hope that the card that comes out isn't that bad. When to let something move up the track to 5 and you pull the card and like maybe that card won't completely kill us or nuke our food supply, because sometimes it's fine. Sometimes you're like, fine, I'll just shut down the crew quarters, I don't really need that right now. But other times you're like, shoot, I have to shut down this, the research, or I have to shut down or lose my my rovers this round, which I really, really needed to actually get done what I needed to do. I love that aspect because it always allows you always have choice. And that was something I always liked about Robinson Crusoe. But in this one, it's a little more pronounced because of the way the app integrates and because of the way there are so many different possible things that can go wrong, that you have a little bit, you're like, well, maybe the thing that breaks isn't the one I really need, I really like that.
Yeah, and so, I mean, why is this game number 2, number 3 on the top 100 list? Or why is Robinson Crusoe anyway? Why was this game so hyped? I really do think that short-term, long-term, action by action, not even turn by turn, action by action, every single one of your actions, you have to balance those two things in a way that's more tension-filled and powerful than some other games in the genre. I really think that's what really sets Robinson Crusoe apart. And this game too. This game keeps it. And if you're wondering, does this game kind of lesser or better? I don't think it's more or less. I think it's the same. I think they really managed to recreate it, and they do it. It's a different flavor. You're doing different stuff. You're surviving as opposed to adventuring and exploring. But that they keep that, which is the thing they had to do. So kudos to them for that. One criticism I have of the scenarios is I don't like that they themed them. So when you look at the scenarios, here's the building scenario. You're going to be building a lot this turn or in this game. I don't remember that being the case in Robinson. I think it kind of worked out that way because, some were leaned towards hunting or whatever it was, but I don't remember them being so pronounced. Like you do these, there's certain acts you just have to do over and over again. The effect that has is there's going to be some players, let's say you play multiplayer, some players are going to do the same exact action every single turn because of the way it is, right? So me and Anthony, we played a game, the first game, which was a builder scenario. I think, the builder character. I didn't even have to think. I just put my guy in the builder. Do I put one pawn or two, or how important this is, blah, blah, blah. But I was doing the same action over and over again. So just what I was saying, the choices are really juicy in this, the way the scenarios are constructed, that they're particular characters whose choices are limited because this is the builder scenario and you have to build all the time. So I thought that was kind of working against what makes this game so great.
Yeah, I agree. I think that builder scenario is a good example. The the exploration one where you're trying to find the beacons is another good example because you're just doing the same thing over and over and over again. It depends. I mean, if you're playing by yourself, it's not so bad because you're trying to figure the same thing. You're trying to balance these things out. But yeah, with other people, it's never fun to just be that guy who's like, you're the exploration guy. You're the building guy.
But no, I want to do an event.
Nope. You build. You can re-roll. You build.
So yeah, I mean, so buyer beware on that. As a 4-player game, I think there's pluses and minuses at the max player count. So there is a lot of interaction because they're so it's kind of tricky to call, like, because everybody is talking so communally. It's like we're all figuring out what to do with each other's pawns, so you don't really feel it so much. But if you're focused on your own pawns, like what should I do, and you're the builder, God forbid you're playing a builder scenario because you're going to be building all the time.
Yeah.
Oh well. Yeah, so that's kind of our thoughts about gameplay. It took Anthony and I and many, many people a little while to learn how to play the game. Anthony,
Oh.
would you care to tell the people why it took us such a long time to learn the game?
Okay, so here's the deal.
Flame retardant vest, go.
Yeah, let's do this. So the rule book is an interesting piece of equipment. It's not as bad as that first edition Robinson Crusoe rulebook. Let's just get that out of the way. So people are saying it is. It's not. But here's the problem. It relies a lot on you, I guess, picking up things from context. So the basic rulebook runs through all the basic rules, but it separates a lot of things out into sidebars. You have some things that are separate on the left or on the right, and they seem like they're examples, but they're not. They're very important. Sometimes it is an example, but the example is illustrating a very important rule. Other things are not really covered in depth at all because they come up in the app. And so the rules are basically saying, you'll figure it out when it comes up. But that means you don't fully understand what's supposed to happen or why it's supposed to happen. The other problem is that it doesn't really approach the flow of the game. It doesn't really teach you how to set up the scenario or how to flow with the scenario or how everything kind of comes from the scenario. And the scenarios basically guide the rules. So combined with some sentences that don't really flow or some paragraphs that don't fully explain the rules, it is a little rough. It's clear that it's rough because if you go to the BGG boards, Ignacy has a thread for every single scenario with multiple FAQs answering all the different questions people have, plus a main thread with dozens of questions he's answered. And these were up on day one because he knew this was coming. And I don't know why these things weren't better addressed somehow, whether it was through an interactive tutorial in the app or just a better, bigger rule book, especially after they went through the whole first edition, second edition thing with Robinson. It's just not, I don't know, it doesn't really do a good job of walking you through the game. I read the rulebook twice. I played through the intro scenario. I didn't really feel like I understood the game until after Rodney's video came out, which was a couple days after I got the game. Watch It Played. And I can see now why on the box in giant font it says, go watch It Played, don't read the rulebook. So I would also say do that.
So let me give you, or give the people an example of a sentence that might be a little bit weird to interpret. So this is about the green-red status markers. So every picture you see of this game of the board fully laid out, you're going to see the facilities. You're going to see rows and rows of green markers. How do they work? Well, quote, green/red status markers in these facilities do not indicate that energy should or shouldn't be supplied. Only that what's been supplied can or cannot be used. What? I mean, and so there's a bunch of things wrong with that. First, it's like kind of awkward English, like you shouldn't use or statements, multiple ones in the same sentence. Second, it tells me what the green-red status markers do not do before they tell me what they do. So this is page 9. On page 10, in a sidebar, they tell me green markers mean working and red markers mean the thing is broken. And then they define what broken means. So this is kind of another thing that's my issue with the rule book is, so First Martians, it kind of does some things that are unintuitive. So when you put, like in like a lot of games, so if something has like a green marker and a red marker and it's a facility, it usually means working and like not working. It's pretty simple, right? So you see the building's either working, giving you resources, and you have to pay for it to upkeep, or it's not working, it's shut down, you don't have to pay any resources for it. In First Martians, there's actually 3 states. There's working, there's not working, and then there's shutdown. Not working or broken and shutdown are 2 different status effects. So shutdown means it doesn't consume any energy. Broken means it consumes energy, but it kind of, you pay this penalty for using it. So that became clear to me after watching a video and
Yeah.
after playing the game, like, not 100 times, but a couple of times. So, and once you kind of know that and you read the rule book back, you kind of like, okay, I can see where they're coming from, but it was laid out really poorly. So they're telling me on page 9 in the main rules what the green red status markers don't do. Page 10, the explanation or the full explanation is in a sidebar about something kind of unrelated. So I see some other people on BGG saying, "Oh, the rules aren't so bad. I read them and I understood them." Well, that's great for you. So
I'm glad you can keep all of that information in your head at once and then reorganize it in the order it needs to actually be told you. Like,
that's exactly what it is. Like some people, I think the rule book was written for a certain kind of person who can handle a large information dump and they don't really need either like visual examples or to have it like you were saying before in a flow. So I'm a visual person, like, and the first thing I see when I see the board of all these green cubes, and all I want to know is what do these green cubes mean? Nowhere in the rule book is a picture of a facility with a red cube on it and a little box that says, okay, this is what this means. That's what I need in order to, learn how to play a game, especially if it's gonna be funky where it isn't green works, red doesn't work. It kind of adds this wrinkle. I need that. And a lot of other players need that. And if you can just read this rule book and get it, great. Not all of us are in that boat. So I noticed that there's a lot of like, oh, well, what's wrong with you? And blah, blah, blah. That's where the flame is coming in. So like people are mad at the rules. People are mad at the people complaining about the rules. I don't know. It's a frustrating conversation because it could have been avoided, as Anthony was saying, just with a little more attention to not just the information, but the way it's presented, the way it's laid out, and the way it flows.
yeah, I think just a little more blind playtesting would have caught all this. Because, again, like I said, Ignacy was on there day one, taking people's questions and answering them to his credit, which is awesome. He spent a ton of time in there. But if you'd just done that with your playtesters, you wouldn't needed to do that. You could have either addressed it in the rules or had an FAQ in the rules or put it up in advance, whatever it was. Like when I learn a game, I set it up completely. So I read the setup, I set up the game, and then I walk through round by round while I'm reading and just make sure I understand situations. So if I go to do something and I'm like, wait, this wasn't covered in the rules that I remember, it's possible I missed it or I just forgot, I'll look back through until I can find an example or figure it out. This, like, there was like a dozen different situations just in that intro mission that were just not covered or not clearly defined. And so that many different places where you're like, I'm not sure. And the inability to go back in the app and see like, well, what did it say here when this particular, like at the beginning of a round, you can't go back and see what the initial event was. So if you aren't following it clearly, or if you're not sure of the flow, or you don't understand how it's supposed to be laid out, it's really hard to get your feet under you and once you do, it all does flow and it all does make sense. And especially if you've played Robinson before, 40% of the rules are the same. So a lot of it is going to be very familiar. But getting to that point is difficult, and that's tough. And for people coming into this fresh who've never played Robinson, I foresee a lot of frustration here. And this is why I'm glad we live in 2017. This game's coming out because we have Watch It Played, we have Rodney Smith, we have everybody else on YouTube doing awesome work and showing us how to play this game and suffering through the FAQs to figure it out for us. So we don't have to. So definitely start there.
Yeah, and it's a shame because, we'll get to the final thoughts in a minute, but I think the rule book is probably my main hang up or the rules issues. I eventually got it, but did I have to go through all that stuff in order to get there? And especially in campaign mode, which I'll talk about kind of a little bit down the road in this podcast, but the campaign mode and in the scenarios too, there's a lot of rules in the scenarios that are not covered in the base rules, and they're covered in the scenarios and in the further campaign scenarios in a way they're not articulated very well, and there's some things are still kind of unclear. And when I was in campaign 5, I put up a thread on BGG, and Ignacy was like, "You're right, this isn't that clear." So and to make it all the way through a campaign like that, and to experience this awesomeness and not feel like I was on the right kind of ground with it. That was a little bit of a bummer. But we've been mentioning the app, and in theory, the app is supposed to cover a lot of the ground that the rules don't cover. Anthony, what do you think of the app?
So I don't dislike the app. I think it's quick, it's intuitive. I mean, it doesn't take long to get started. It will recommend scenarios for you based on, if you say you want to be building or exploring or whatever it is. You can set the difficulty, and it automates all those cards and keeps track of all those events, which is great. You do lose something of the theme in there a little bit. So in terms of the mood or the ambiance, it is very clinical. It's very, like you're looking at a computer screen, like in the game. And so when something happens to somebody, it's usually written up as a log entry. So they're just saying, oh, this horrible thing happened. That's no good. But you don't really get that same sense of storytelling maybe that you did with like the cards in Robinson Crusoe, which is fine because if as long as you know that's what you're coming for and that's the kind of game you're getting, it's science, it's Mars, it's clinical. But with so many other games out there using apps and being able to evoke more theme and mood and kind of pull you in a little bit, I felt like there was more they could have done here.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, we're talking about the Manchester Madness app, which I think is kind of at the gold standard at this point. Would you agree?
Yeah, definitely. That's by far, when I think of what should you be doing in an app, especially in this kind of rules-heavy game, that's the one I think of.
Yeah, so what Manchester Madness does, I think it does three things really well. So one is, as Anthony was saying, creates mood. So Manchester Madness does that by spooky music. I mean, not like, over the top, but it managed to make that balance where the music is just kind of there as a substratum of your experience. It isn't just kind of foreground, really well done. And, like the sounds and stuff like that, like the clinking chains or closing doors and whatever, which is pretty cool. So it creates mood. The second, it deals with the bad guy phase all on its own. So that in MOM, it's the Mythos cards. In this game would be the event cards. So just every cooperative game has an event phase where you turn over a card or you roll a die and you kind of something bad happens to you and you have to spend the turn responding. So the app does, a good app will handle that whole thing. And then the third thing it does is it handles all of the other in-game tracking. So it tells, so the MOM app tells you where the boards are, tells you where the tokens go, differentiates between different tokens and everything. It keeps track of the timer. So if there's like an expiration on the token, you have to get this in 5 rounds. It'll just do that. So there's the tracking in between phases and also the tracking in game. This app only does the second. It only does the bad guy phase. It creates no mood whatsoever. None. There's no music. There's no like the graphic design of it isn't very interesting. Like there's a way to make science pretty interesting. So going back to the book and also the movie, this was maybe an overlooked kind of thing that they did. But Mark Watney was stuck on Mars, and all he had was a bunch of disco and 70s crappy sitcoms like Happy Days and Three's Company. In a way, that became the soundtrack of his experience, especially when he was in that first part of the movie. So I'm not saying that the app should have played, ABBA. That would have been a little bit awkward. It would have been a nice wink, but I could see that not playing so well. But the author and the director of the movie put intention around it's Mars, but it doesn't have to be completely desolate. We need to find ways to bring people in, and not just like in terms of the text, but in terms of sound and, music and all that kind of stuff. Missed opportunity there. I'm not sure how much of that is a resource thing. Fantasy Flight's huge company, Portal small company. They're just starting their apps, so maybe they wanted to do it and they just couldn't. I don't know. But definitely missing. When I first played with the app, I was like, what's wrong with the sound of my iPad? Why isn't this making music? And sure enough, nothing was wrong with the sound of my iPad. Didn't do anything. And then the in-game tracking, even with the event phase being taken care of by the app, there's still a lot of tracking you have to do. You're still managing those tokens on the oxygen and the energy. You're still pulling cards for the malfunctions. So like there's these 3 different decks on the side that govern your facilities, and when certain things happen, you pull over those cards. You're still dealing with tokens of your determination so that you activate your special powers. You're doing all that. So wasn't the app experience supposed to kind of streamline some of that? Some people like that in the game, so that's cool, but I think that was also a missed opportunity as well to kind of eliminate some of the fiddliness. So because that's another complaint people have about this game, it's fiddly. You know, I on that one, I don't know. I'm kind of both ways, but I can acknowledge people's hesitation about that. On the mood thing, definitely missed opportunity. It's at least the event phase was pretty good. The benefit of the app is that you get 500 events. I actually think that might have been a detriment because you don't need that many events. A lot of events are kind of the same. Do you need 200 permutations of lose one morale? You know, so I don't know. It's okay. It's okay. Um, so yeah, so let's leave aside the app. At this point, Anthony said that he didn't play campaign mode. Um, so I did a lot of like, I'm kind of like halfway, wasn't happy about the rules, not too happy about the app. The theme kind of was that and there. Like the thing about this game is that I really feel like the way where this game really shines is campaign mode. This is like, for whatever difficulties I had with the scenarios, I really got into the campaign mode. I played it over 2 nights, and I only stopped because of that rules hang up that I had in the fifth scenario, or else I would have just knocked it out in one night. Uh, it was propulsive. It was interesting. It was really fun. And in a way, it was better than a game like Pandemic Legacy or Robinson Crusoe, Voyage of the Beagle. Yeah, so in those other games, you're building, or the diseases are spreading, or stuff is happening, but then you get to the end of the game and you have to soft reset. So the all of a sudden Chennai is like bubbling over with disease, and then the next game there's no disease and the disease moved on to somewhere else. Like, okay, that was nice. I didn't even do anything. This is great. So you're playing all these different games. Not as many people were kind of bothered by that. I kind of was a little bit. Took me out of it a little bit. Wasn't a deal breaker by any stretch. Pandemic Legacy is one of my favorite games of all time. Still, it's great. But there was that little wrinkle. In this game, because of the way it's styled, because you start with everything and it slowly breaks, it carries over really, really well from one scenario to another. So it's like, all you got to do is make sure that everything that's on, that the way that the facility is at that point where you end the game, you pick it up pretty much exactly from there into the next scenario. So that story cohesion is so much stronger than in some of these other games. Like in Voyage of the Beagle, there's a soft reset of resources. Like let's say you end the scenario with like 10 wood. Well, you start the next scenario with 3 wood. Why? Because. Because you have to from a gameplay perspective. In this game, you start with a broken oxygenator or whatever it is. In the next game, that oxygenator is still broken. You're going to have to still deal with it. I think the events, I didn't notice that the events carried over from game to game. I think they do. Don't quote me on that. But the fact that, you had ramifications happening along the way, the food grows at a very slow rate in a campaign mode. Great. That food's going to keep on growing. You have a lot of time to grow it and do what you need to do. The story itself, I'm not going to spoil it, and that'd be stupid to spoil it, but there was a lot of neat little tricks. There was a lot of neat little turns. I mean, for every problem that I had with this game, and I don't know if I had very many substantive mechanical problems with the game, but they're more like, kind of the incidental stuff. Campaign mode was really exciting, and I could just really recommend this game for the price of admission based on the campaigns alone.
Man, I got to get on that.
At the end of the day, I would rate this game an 8 on the BGG scale, 1 to 10. It would be a 9, like just off of the campaign. Like when I come off of a really fun campaign, really, interesting story, I come out of that like thinking about the game afterwards, thinking about different things that happened. And I definitely had that feeling after playing the First Martians campaign, which is like my line. This is a 9 if I think about the game after. I had to bump it down to an 8 because of those rules, because of how much trouble I had. Yes, if you had no problems with the rules, good on you. I had a lot of problems with the rules, and I'm not alone. And there are layout issues that really need to be addressed. So that really takes it down a notch. If they could find a way to solve that, then man, I really do think, and I really think that this game stands with Robinson. Robinson is great. It's a different beast than Robinson. In a way, it's better because for me, it's better because the campaign is better in this game than Robinson. But if you love Robinson and you can get past those rules, I think this is very, very worthy to have in your collection.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, I'm hesitant to assign a score at this point because I haven't played the campaign yet. Based on the scenarios alone, I come at it. I like the theme more. I personally have felt more engaged thus far. I feel more into the game, so I'm kind of on par with Robinson, maybe a slightly below it, just because of some of the difficulties that have been had and some of the issues that we've discussed. Um, but that's again without having played the campaign at all. Scenario wise, you get a decent amount out of the box. I think there are definitely some gaps here, so I look forward to seeing future expansions, mini expansions, whatever there are. It's Portal games, we know they're coming, that maybe utilize more of what's in the box to create a more cohesive scenario that just does more things. It's not so you're just building or exploring or whatever it is. And then maybe updates to the app or whatever it ends up being. There's definitely a lot of places I can look at the game and be like, these are cool places that I could see expanding or more stuff coming. But yeah, I mean, I'm happy. I'm happy I picked it up early. I've had fun with it. I've played it a lot more than I normally do this type of game. I'm not a big co-op guy. And I've enjoyed it thus far, even with all those issues. So I'm very, very much looking forward to the campaign. And I have a feeling that I will, get a lot out of it too, just because that's the kind of thing I always get into. But yeah, check my BGG page in like 2 weeks. Once I've played the campaign, you'll see what my score is on this one.
So I guess my final recommendation is there's going to be some people who are saying, okay, if I have Robinson, do I need this? For me, if the campaign mode is not necessarily a draw and you just want to play those scenarios and you want to kind of go into the mechanics of it all, this is a fiddlier version. There's a lot more to track. The app has a little bit of difficult integration because it's basically just a pile of cards. It doesn't add that much besides being a pile of cards. There's still that luck aspect. I mean, there's all the stuff there's going to be a lot of little wrinkles where maybe this will be a difficult thing. The thing that takes it over the line for me is the campaign mode. If that's a draw for you, if you're into campaign stuff, then I really, really enjoy this game. And if you're not, then, that's something to think about.
All right. So there you have it, people. First Martians, our first deep dive epic review at epic length.
Deep.
And as you can see, we're not cool on the game. We like it, and it's just there are some issues, unfortunately, that you do need to know about and you need to address and be honest with yourself about if you're going to pick up the game. As Jason mentioned, if campaign's important to you, then this is definitely something to look at. If it's not important to you, make sure you've had to play the game before you kind of go in and invest on it. But yeah, it's not. Some people say the sky is falling. I don't think the sky is falling. There's definitely ways to learn the game that's not going to burn your brain out. And a lot of these issues are not major issues. So definitely check it out if you're a fan of big, heavy, meaty, brain-burning co-ops, or if you liked Robinson Crusoe. It's definitely worth checking out for either of those reasons, and especially the campaign side of things. All right, so that's going to go ahead and be everything for this big episode of First Martians coverage. We'll be back. Well, we'll probably mention this guy again in the future.
Yeah.
As it gets out to more people and we've had a chance to kind of play through more of the stuff that in the box. But for this week, that's going to go ahead and be everything. Make sure you connect with us on all the different places where we spend our time. On Facebook, Board Gamers Anonymous there. On Twitter, both as BGA Podcast and at ENGN_podcast. You can find us on BoardGamersAnonymous.com. You can find us on Board Game Geek, the guild there, 1735, and in the Facebook Solo Board Gamers group, where Jason in particular is extremely active. But for this week, that's going to go ahead and be everything. So until next time, go ahead and grab a solo game off the shelf, and let's make every night game night.
Later, everybody.